The Hydra Sorcerer is probably one of the strongest, easiest, and fastest builds in Diablo 4 for Season 9. And when I say easy, I mean quite literally anyone can play this build. What I have right here is not the build's final form. It's not even remotely close. I have, I think, like 0 greater affixes. I literally have half of my gear is item level 750, and I might have like I have 2 mythics that are on right now, and they're kind of a big deal, I guess, but these aren't, it's not like a game changer. They're enhancers, but they're not game changers regarding this build in any sense of the word. I mean, for Belial's sake, I don't even have a greater affix on Ophidian Iris. I have a decent hit on Primordial Binding, but we're going to go over the rest of the gear here just to kind of give you an idea of what you should be looking for. I'm just going to cover the key points that you need for Hydra because it's extremely simple. It's super not complicated in any way, shape, or form. So let's dive right in. As a helmet, you don't need Shaco. I just use it because I made one specifically so that I can make a bunch of other sorcerer builds. Not for this one, but it is used in the end game form of this. So that's super cool, but you can use just a regular legendary helmet with defensive aspects of some sort and then try to get mana regen. Mana regen helps you early on. With this gear, just so you know, with the gear that I have currently, I can clear a pit tier 70 in like 5, 4, 3 minutes, something like that. It's not slow by any means, and I can just cakewalk through everything in tier 4. And again, I'm using weapons. I shit you not, I'm using a non-greater affix weapon that I had to re-roll damage on because I bricked so many ancestral legendary weapons trying to make a staff for this build, and I couldn't. So here we are. For the chest, I'm using Raiment of the Infinite. I got a greater affix on Glass Cannon, so I was like, all right, cool, I'm just gonna use that. I just threw that on. I don't even think that's recommended for any version of the build, but I put it on there because it's kind of neat. I do use the teleport to my advantage because I try to group the shielding mobs together, so that's nice. On the rest of the legendaries that you're gonna use, like your gloves, your boots, and your ring, because you're probably not gonna have a Starless Skies right when you hit tier 4, but you want to go for Intelligence, some form of life, so either life, armor, or resistances, and then core skills, because Ophidian Iris makes Hydra a core skill. Now we're using Axial Conduit, and the only reason we're using this is because it has some damage reduction, which is pretty nice, but it has maximum resource and resource generation. Those come in handy because the main aspect to this entire build is Serpentine. With Serpentine, every point of mana that you have increases your Hydra damage by X amount. And then it also drains your entire mana globe. So obviously you want to get that back as fast as you can, and you only want to cast Hydra when you're at full mana, most of the time. Ophidian Iris you want to have, because what Ophidian Iris does is it makes your Hydras, however many heads that you have on there, which by the way is what you want to temper on your weapons. You want to temper Hydra heads and Hydra damage, and then on your gloves you want to also do Hydra damage. But what Ophidian Iris does is it makes your Hydra basically consume all your extra heads to still only have 3, but make it larger and deal even more damage per head that it consumes, essentially. So this is why you'll see all these Hydra Sorcs with these massive 3-headed Hydras instead of like, 18, 20 heads, you know what I mean? But then the other thing that this does is it adds to Primordial Binding, and why is that important? So Primordial Binding on your skill tree is the one that every conjuration that you have, you get summon damage, movement speed, and then mana regeneration. The damage and the mana regen are super big, but the movement speed is also quite nice for just generally running around. And you have an infinite 10 stack of this due to Nagu and Se, or Ke. I don't even know whatever. The tyrannical runeword. What this does is as long as you have one active summon anywhere, which counts as Ice Blades or Hydra or anything like that, as long as you have one active summon, you will summon a Spirit Wolf after you generate X amount of resource, offering, whatever. Really stupid name for these rune words. But yeah, so I'm going to run outside real quick and show you what that looks like. So I just have to cast like a single Hydra. That's not how you get out of here. I'm going to cast a single Hydra, and then you'll see how it kind of compounds. So we cast one Hydra. Obviously, the Hydra is super big, and there's a Spirit Wolf. I mean, I can summon my other things too, so I can summon that, and then you're going to see more Spirit Wolves. Now there's 3 that spawned on that tick because they last for, I think, 10 seconds. 8 seconds. So they last for 8 seconds, and you generate offering per summon up to 6 summons. So inevitably, the more Spirit Wolves you have, the more Spirit Wolves you generate, and therefore the more Spirit Wolves you have. You end up hitting like this max Primordial Binding without any issues at all. So now I'm constantly at 10. It's going to re-roll to 10 every time. I run faster, I do more damage, etc. And so that is why Nagu Se is probably the best rune word I would argue on every single sorcerer. I think it's quite literally used on every single sorcerer build because of the primordial binding thing this season. So running back into town so I can explain this and not die like I do in every single video. For the skills that kills on this one, it's basically the exact same for every sorcerer. And I know I just said that about primordial binding, but it is almost literally the exact same build for every single sorcerer build out there, except for whatever core skill you're using. So I'm not going to waste your time by going over every single detailed item because they're all the same. You have Flame Shield, you have Shimmering Teleport, you have Ice Armor, and then you max out whatever your core skill is, and then you also have like the rest of your summons because Primordial Binding, all the defensives. It's literally the same thing on every single sorcerer. If you've played this game before, you're using this exact same build for any sorcerer that you play. So there's nothing else that I really need to explain here. Now, there's two ways that people have built Hydra. One is definitely better than the other one, and that's stacking damage and crit damage. This one uses Esu's Ferocity because it's the critical strike damage, critical strike chance. However, you can stack into Burning with Endless and whatever the other burning damage ones are and Combustion. You could do that, but because we're stacking the crit version, like the leveling version of this, I would probably do the burning damage one. It's way easier to level that way. But the end game, you're looking at Invoked Hydra versus Roaring. I didn't really want to do that all lazily, but genuinely every single build is the same, so it doesn't really matter. Now, on your enchantments, I have Flame Shield enchanted as well as Familiar. So Familiar is super cool. Every time you cast a Hydra, you have a chance to summon a Familiar, and that multiplies your damage. You get 10% when you have a Familiar out at all times. So you pretty much have one all the time. It's really nice. It's just a general buff. I use Flame Shield because I was dying a ton. Now I'm armor and res capped in tier 4, so I don't need to use this anymore. So what most people do is they use teleport so that they have extra mobility, and then they remove teleport from their bar and use something like Frost Nova or something else just to have either another summon out there to max your primordial binding or another defensive or whatever. But I like using these because I like, but there's other versions of this that use a different skill bar, just like minor tweaks, but it's pretty much the same idea. You have teleport, then you have defensive, super damage steroid. This cools down really fast. Inferno cools down way faster than I thought it does. And then Ice Blades does apply vulnerable, which is kind of neat. I feel like I'd rather use Mythical Frost Nova, but that's fine. And then Hydra, obviously. This is extremely controller and console friendly because the gameplay loop of this one is you throw down a Hydra and then you dance around it until your mana pool is back to full. And then you throw down another Hydra and you dance around it until your mana pool is back to full. And you just kind of do that over and over again. You don't have to do anything else. You just have to live. And so sometimes that's difficult because you're playing a sorcerer, but yeah, you get the idea. Now the Paragon board, I will spare you most of this because almost everything in here is dedicated to either living or dealing more critical strike damage and having more critical strike chance. So I'll go over all of the glyphs and give you a kind of a quick explanation as to why and which Paragon board we're using, but you're going to see kind of the same trend with every single glyph and Paragon board that we go through. The first one we're using is Tactician. It's just a massive steroid all around. The first board that we're using is Searing Heat because it's critical strike chance and critical strike damage. But the glyph on this one is the second most important one because there's one that's definitely more important than this one. But the second most important glyph that we have, this is the one that you want to boost right after you're done with the first one, but this one is critical strike damage and also critical strike damage. The board to the right of that is Elementalist, where we're going to do a lot more damage, and it also has that Tal Rasha effect where every version of damage that you're doing, so your Ice Blades or your Teleport or your Hydra, it stacks another stacking damage buff. I'm also using Tal Rashas, so you get kind of like the best of that twice. And this is on the Enchantment Master board. The next one up is Fundamental Release, which means every time you apply vulnerable to things, you do more damage to them. Surprise. But this one uses Pyromaniac, and there's one little part of Pyromaniac that I want to talk about, and that's the vulnerable damage. So that kind of ties back to part of your gear on your weapon. At the later parts of end game on your weapon, you want to get vulnerable damage instead of critical strike damage as your third stat line. So it's like intelligence, life, and then blank. Normally, I would go critical strike damage until you get to a certain point, and then you want to go vulnerable damage because then that multiplies your already like 2000% giga stacked critical strike damage. So that's pretty important. You'll see a big gain. In this current state that I'm in right now, I see zero difference between one or the other. They do just about the exact same damage. So the further you go on with this build, the more you want to rely on getting vulnerable damage on your weapon. The last Paragon board is Frigid Fate, where you deal more vulnerable damage to vulnerable targets. Crazy concept there, but this is the most important glyph out of all of them, and it's Conjure. This increases your damage with your Hydra, which is your conjuration, but it also gives them more critical hit chance. So you really have extremely high crit chance and extremely high crit damage with this build. I don't want to look because I feel like my crit chance is going to be really low after saying that. You need to be critting a lot, but with that, it ends up being like 50%. So at least half the time your Hydras shoot their exploding fireballs instead of their fire bolts, they're critically striking and doing just an assload of damage. It's really nice. But that's at least a brief summary of the Paragon board. If you wanted to dive into like the deep whys between all of this, I'll have a link to the build in the description down below. That's going to be for the Maxroll build guide. There's a really good one done by Makuna that I don't think is on Maxroll. I don't remember what site his stuff is on, but the one that I follow is, I think, North Wars, which, yeah, that one I'm going to link down below. But the Makuna one is faster because you get to teleport all the time. That's kind of cool. But that's about the gist of the build. I'm going to do a pit like 70 just to see what that looks like and see how fast it is. We're probably going to make like 4 minutes on this one. And it's only a pit 70, but my gear is absolute trash. Like anybody that gets into tier 4 will probably have equivalent gear to what I'm using right now. So this is a pretty good example. You can turbo stomp everything in tier 4, like hell tides and everything like that. Nothing's hard. You can kill every boss. You can do everything. It's all super easy. Pit climbing is the only part that's kind of hard because I end up getting like one shot out of nowhere sometimes, but it happens. But yeah, void of all that, let's get to the action. So yeah, even when dying to stupid shit, I don't even know what I died to, but it was at the very, very last little segment there. This was still like a 3-minute run, and my gear is trash. My glyphs, like, look at my glyphs. They are all at exactly 46 except for Conjure, and Conjure is the only one that I like to boost right now because it just gives more damage, whatever. But yeah, that's crazy. This build is really, really strong. You just die to like the weirdest things sometimes, but I guess every kind of glass cannon-y thing is like that. My rogue does the same thing at pit 95 or pit 100. I will die to like the most random nothing, and it's something normally on the ground that I'm not paying attention to, like either the acid explosions or the little frost balls or whatever. Yeah, I just like catching very, very bad places to stand. But all in all, the build is really good. My closing thoughts are it's extremely strong, and I like it, but I also hate it because for me, it's too slow paced. For anybody else, it's probably just fine. I don't see any issues with this build. I think it's quite literally the strongest build, the strongest sorcerer build next to Chain Lightning, like in the whole game right now. You can definitely kill Belial with yourself, a bunch of friends, whatever you want to do. You can do all kinds of carries with it. You can make it way faster than I'm currently playing it. But yeah, hopefully you found the build guide portion of this useful and get a better understanding of it, and maybe you can get your own build off the ground and start slaying in T4 like the rest of us. If you like this video, please do so because it's free and it really helps out the channel here. If there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, throw it in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already, because that again helps us out here and it helps you get more good content if you liked it. I don't know. I think good is subjective to the person. But yeah, last plug and I'm gone, but you can also hang out with us in Discord if you want to. That's entirely up to you. If you want to bring positivity and fun times, do it. And if you don't, then don't. Thanks again for watching this video. And if you're bored, YouTube's going to recommend this next one for you. Happy grinding, travelers, and we'll see you in Sanctuary.